Hello and welcome to the Guns on Pegs podcast. My name is George Brown, and this episode I am joined by my colleague Digby Taylor. I am the editor at Guns on Pegs. Digby is the managing director of Guns on Pegs. Digby, this is a little bit of a different setting from our usual podcast recordings.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever really done I don't think I could call it a day's work, but done any work with quite such a stunning view.
Yeah, it's we're on location, let's put it like that. But to get a better idea about where we are and maybe why, perhaps you should introduce our guest.
Yeah, thanks, George. So today we are joined by Matt Hollington, who founded and runs Atlas Sporting, an international game shooting, fishing and hunting agency. I think it's fair to say that if you're after something a little bit more niche or adventurous, Matt is certainly the person to go to. We've been chatting over the last few days about trips he's got coming up. Hopefully he'll tell us a bit more about that in a minute. But Matt Hollington, welcome. Do you want to tell us where we are and maybe describe the backdrop to our listeners?
Yeah, no problem. Thank you very much for having me. So we are currently sat at Whidian, which is our shoot in the Atlas Mountains in Morocco. We're on the 6th floor of the hotel, overlooking the lake and some of the estate. I mean, it's really hard to explain, but there's we've got a mosque. We've got a 1,000 hectare lake. Got some of our partridge drives in the background.
I mean, it is an absolutely incredible setting, and it's not one that a view that you might typically associate with shooting. But some gentlemen have just arrived, so I think now is a good moment to move on to a listener favourite segment, which is the What's That You're Drinking segment, and we've got something a bit special.
So, Matt, what is that? Sorry, George, I've stolen your thunder. Am I allowed to do that?
Yeah, so what you should be able to hear right now is the sound of Moroccan tea being poured into our glasses in front of us. Matt, this is pretty traditional, right?
Yeah, so tea is it's obviously a predominantly Muslim country, so they drink very little alcohol, or not a lot at all, really. And tea is their equivalent of whiskey. And it's fantastic. Usually consumed with an awful lot of sugar, but it's delicious.
I've just put mine down because it's incredibly hot. But we've also got some more traditional podcast drinks with us, we might say. So what have we got in the ice bucket there?
So there is one company in Morocco that brews beer, and they're called Casablanca, and we have a few bottles for you to try.
Yeah, well, we've had one or two since we arrived a few days ago, and it's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, for a country that consumes very little alcohol, they make amazing wine and beer.
Have you tried that tea yet, George?
What, this one's particularly, or
that tastes an awful lot like Pimm's.
do you think?
Just have a sip.
Have a go.
I mean,
I think they knew we were coming.
Yeah. Warm Pimm's. It's absolutely delicious.
It's delicious. It is the mint, isn't it, that makes it Pimmsy?
There we go.
And it's really, really good and very refreshing. People often are surprised that hot tea is a refreshing drink, aren't they? But it's really, really good.
I think sadly, the listeners can't see us, but we're all looking a little pink from the sun today, and it's been a hot day, sat by the pool.
It's definitely the first Guns on Pegs podcast recorded in swimming shorts.
I mean, you guys work from home, so I don't believe that for a minute.
The reason we are out here in Morocco is that Matt very kindly organised a bit of a press trip, and we've been having a look and taking part in some of the activities that are available at Whidian. So, Diggers, why don't you give us a little brief overview of how yesterday began?
Yes, we arrived on Thursday. I mean, first thing to say, arrived in the dark into the middle of nowhere, what it felt like, and woke up the next morning to see the view that we mentioned. I mean, if some of our listeners would have been to the Atlas Mountains, it is sheer mountains, basically. And there's this just huge lake reservoir. So, you'll know what I mean by when you wake up in a place which you arrived at night, you're not quite sure what to expect. woke up the next morning, saw the view, and just thought this is absolutely perfect shooting country.
Oh, it's pretty steep.
I think, to say the very least. So yeah, we came out yesterday. Then we were out shooting driven boar, which is a new experience for me. And we drove 20 odd minutes into the Atlas Mountains, to even more rural, past 20 minutes on a dirt track, essentially, into the middle of nowhere, into the bush, and had a fantastic day on the mountain shooting driven boar.
Yeah, and some people might be thinking that that wild boar is a pretty unusual quarry species for a predominantly Muslim country. So, Matt, maybe you can give a little background on why driven boar shooting here is particularly important for the local community.
Okay, so the pigs are a real issue. In countries where a lot of pork is consumed, hunters tend to hunt a lot of boar. But in predominantly Muslim countries such as Morocco and Turkey, they're kind of left to their own devices. The populations expand very rapidly, and you get a lot of issues in small villages where pigs are savaging pets and farm animals, destroying crops. So the Moroccans have found that organising trips for international hunters really helps with keeping the numbers down, and brings a little bit of money into rural economy as well.
And a lot of the locals here are subsistence farmers. Our driver was telling us yesterday. So, when it's not just a job farming, but it's actually your means of supporting your family, keeping on top of these boar is particularly important, right?
Yeah, completely. So you'll find that you get a bit of a cluster of farms. Each one produces something different, and then they all work together to offer their produce to each other in a really simple sort of bartering relationship.
Yeah. And Digby, I think we both agreed that yesterday was one of the more unique experiences we've had.
In our other podcast, Shoot Hub News, we do a slot called the beating noise of the episode, or Shoot Hub beating noise of the week. I don't think I've ever heard quite such a noise from a beating line in my life. George, you're much better with words than I am. Why don't you explain a little bit about the experience, or at least the feeling of the beating line advancing from what felt like sort of miles and miles away?
Well, yeah, so I think we mustn't skip ahead too quickly, because Digby's got us as far as where we left the vehicles, and then we where there were a huge number of people. I think we were told there were 60 beaters. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's correct. So a normal day for driven pigs is about 60 beaters.
And there were a huge number of dogs of indeterminate breed. I think it's the polite way of saying it. And we saw some procreation happening. We saw how the indeterminate breeds have come about. And then we all set off up the hillside. Some of the party on donkeys, others on mules, and others on foot. Is that normal, or was that laid on specially for us this time around?
That's completely normal. So what tends to happen is the beating team generally come from a local village. There's 5 villages that sit over the estate, and each of them sort of has their own patch. When there's a shoot day on, all of the locals come out, and the dogs tend to follow because it's an exciting thing to go to see, and they get to chase some pigs. So they'll all go out, and then the donkeys and mules are always there. They're very useful for getting pigs in and out of the
so they're the equivalent of a Highland hill pony.
Yeah, so you could call them a Barbary hill pony.
I like that. Yeah, very good. So we made our way up the hill, and we were then placed in our. Do we call them hides? Is that the right term? Stands?
I would say stand or peg.
Yeah. Okay. But they're you're not sort of completely exposed. You've got a bit of a.
They look like they've been cut out specifically for us. So how do they go about deciding where to put the pegs?
So it's obviously there's a lot of hills and slopes and gullies. we look at the estate on a map and go, if we push pigs this way, they're going to go down that valley, and then strategically place guns, depending on the wind direction and where we're starting our beating line.
Yeah, and so the stand has got a kind of brush, sort of, I guess, wall in front of it, and so we're placed on our stands, and you know things have begun when you can hear the dogs yapping in the distance. That was the first thing I picked up.
Although a lot of chat in Arabic over the walkie-talkies beforehand, and then suddenly it all goes quiet. The loader stood with you, puts his headphones into his walkie-talkie, and says, points and says to the those of us, standing round.
So that's quite a familiar thing if you're like involved in pig shooting anywhere in the world. It's kind of all go, and then everyone getting into position, and then it just goes quiet when you sort of know the action's about to happen and the beating line is starting. And the first indication normally that there's going to be pigs coming your way is noisy dogs or beaters really starting to shout.
And so the drive that we were on yesterday, I clocked it at about an hour and a half running time, and the beaters come from a long way back. What kind of area are they bringing in?
I couldn't tell you in acres, but they are walking. So they start walking way before the drive even starts. They're, like
miles back.
2, 3, 4 kilometres away.
Goodness me. And the other thing I noticed is we were all there in our, smart hunting boots. A lot of those chaps were not in hunting boots. They were in some of them. I think I saw a bloke in flip-flops.
Yeah. So these guys that they spend their entire life in the Atlas Mountains. It's very like natural for them just to sort of go out in shorts or flip-flops and spend a day sort of working.
Bouldering for them is like walking down tarmac on a high street for us, probably.
Yeah,
exactly. I mean, we've got to be clear that this is rough country, right? It's rocky. The shrub is thorny. We'd had a bit of rain, hadn't we? So actually, it was quite slippery underfoot as well. So these guys are pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's been completely untouched. There's areas of the mountains that might get a person visit them once every 3 years, if that.
Yeah, amazing. And so the weight on the stand, you are tense the whole time because you know that at any moment a pig could come out of that scrub, out of that tree line, and then you're on. So you never relax. But the last 10 or 15 minutes was one of the most incredible sounds I think I've ever heard. That got my heart going like nothing on earth. And actually, I never even saw a pig. But, Digby, I think you were in the action a bit.
I was. I mean, they come from 4 or 5 kilometres away. You can hear them for the whole time, all the beaters, because the wind was coming towards us. And it was incredibly tricky to judge distance. So for the whole hour and a half, I thought they were nearly on us, basically. Heart absolutely pumping. And then the noise got louder and louder and louder. And by the end, it was, near deafening in terms of the... And then there were some wild donkeys on the hill, and they came pattering through the undergrowth. And so our guide told us to stay low and get ready for something to happen. And then we saw some donkeys crashing through, so it's like, that your heart rate rose and then dropped again, and you thought, and then a dog came through and we saw some rustling in the background. Again, heart rate rose and then dropped again. And
Did you get any cows come through? I had about 4 or 5 cows come past.
Did you?
Yeah.
I think we probably heard them clattering. And then, the last 10 minutes, as George said, suddenly our loader was telling us to be extra aware, extra alert. And then again, heard some clattering coming through. And through came a sow, followed with some followers. And due to the time of year, we weren't shooting the sows for obvious reasons. And then it was a case of you had to be pretty quick because there's only a 2 or 3 second window where these pigs are coming careering through, that you then had to decide whether that's a sow or a boar, and shoot it or not shoot it. So first came through the sow, followed by the piglets. Let that one go, followed by another sow with some piglets, followed by, which we also let go, followed by a lone sow it turned out to be, with no piglets. It was a barren sow, and the guide said, shoot it, and then I let off a couple of shots.
And do you think you made contact?
It's very hard to tell because, to be honest with you, no, I didn't think I did. I thought I missed it clean. Andy Crow, who's with us on the trip, was stood to my left, probably 45 degrees behind me, probably 30, 40 yards away. So it was bang, bang, miss, bother, bang, bang, bother. Something George and I know an awful lot about.
My children know about, yep.
And then Andy Crow stood behind us. 30 seconds later, we heard bang, and then another shot. Over the radio came through that Andy had shot it. Although he said that it had definitely been hit. There are 3 bullet holes in the pig by the time it got to him. I think, Matt, well, you have to say, they set up these pegs so that pigs don't make it through. Is that right?
Yeah. So the main reason that we shoot them out here is for pest control. So we need to get numbers. The way the drives are laid out is that if a pig makes it past one gun, they are then sort of in line for another one.
And Matt, I think you probably had the closest encounter yesterday. Do you want to just talk us through that? I mean, I don't mean to embarrass you on the podcast, but it feels like it's a story that needs to be told.
Yeah, I'm just going to jump straight in and say that I missed a 2-yard pig.
What was the heart rate like when that 2-yard pig came past? Apparently it's a big boar, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't particularly big, but I did look at it square in the eyes, and I think it laughed at me as it ran away. My heart was in my mouth the entire time.
And was it crossing in front, or...?
Yeah, very quickly it sort of quartered towards me and then danced off into the bushes without stopping.
And you were telling me that for you, boar shooting is like you'd give everything else up.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Especially out here, there's no adrenaline rush like it.
And I think the other thing that we've not mentioned so far is that due to the firearms laws here in Morocco, we're not using rifles.
Correct. So rifles are completely banned. Everything is done with shotguns and slugs. So we use rifled slugs, which are incredibly effective at the close ranges that we shoot at. They're being hit with a golf ball size 32-gram lump of lead. They tend to drop quite quickly.
And when you say close range, I mean the area in front of my stand, I measure things in cricket pitches. I would say that the tree line was about a cricket pitch away. So, even if you were to shoot the second it was on you, that's a 20-yard shot. But if it's in any way coming towards you, it's inside 20 yards.
Absolutely, yeah. So all of them are close. Yeah. We basically cut areas where the pigs have to cross in order to sort of get to safety, and it makes for very effective drive layout.
It was amazing. I mean, the preparation that went into it. Every single peg had been cut out from the brush. With some what looked like rides cut out, or were they natural highways for the pigs?
So they would have been cut out sort of over a few years. There are also mountain paths that the locals use for moving around. And
they've got their livestock out here making paths, and
exactly,
and I guess the pigs themselves are making their own game trails and that kind of thing as well, aren't they?
Yeah, so the entire estate's crisscrossed with lots of very tight tracks that the pigs used to move around. And the keeping team here spent a lot of time out sort of monitoring numbers and working out where they are and how best to sort of add to those tracks or block them off if they need to.
It's absolutely an amazing experience. I can't recommend it highly enough. But I think we need to talk about, maybe the rest of yesterday.
I need a beer, George.
That's a very good idea. Go for it.
Right, now we've got that sorted.
So that was all over. Well, was it 2:00 we came back down the hill? And then we had a pretty amazing lunch. Again, a very traditional... I mean, not a traditional shoot lunch in the sense that people listening back home might be thinking, but just tell us a little bit about what we had and where we had it.
So the shoot set up a traditional Berber tent, and we had tagine and tangier yesterday, which are two sort of very traditional Moroccan dishes. The first one is sort of lots of vegetables with chicken cooked over a fire for a very long time, in a closed pot, and the second one is very similar, usually with either beef or lamb, cooked in a jar.
Kind of looks like an amphora, like a Roman olive oil pot.
Yeah.
Or a Greek pot.
And they're just cooked for a very long time, and then when they're ready to serve, it's just poured out on a big platter in front of you.
With great ceremony as well.
Oh yeah, there's lots of cheering and and clapping.
And they take their hospitality very seriously, don't they? It was fantastic.
Yeah, so there's a lot of people involved, and they all like to be there when things are served. So.
And the quantity as well. I mean, huge quantities of food. And you were telling me that anything that doesn't get consumed by the shooting party will be shared out amongst all the beaters and that kind of thing as well.
Absolutely, yes. So they're very big on using everything up. So if things aren't eaten, they're either passed on to the beaters or shoot staff. If they don't finish it, then it goes off to the local houses and villages. And if they don't touch it, it's fed to their dogs. Yeah.
So that was an amazing morning and an incredible lunch. And from there, we were whisked off in a convoy of 4x4s. We had a gold Land Cruiser. That was quite a vibe.
I want one.
And I think it had been raised up as well, hadn't it?
Yeah, I think raised up with scaffolding poles, not springs.
So we were whisked off up to the top of the hill to a lodge that's part of the hotel.
Correct. So the owner of the hotel built a private residence up the hill, and it's quite an impressive building. And it's let for, we use it for shoot days, and then in the summer it's used for sort of like people that want to be away from everything, who just come on holiday, and other events. So it's a huge space. We've got a helipad up there. There's parking for about 30 cars, and the lodge itself has amazing views over the lake.
Yeah, really incredible views. And we were up there to shoot some clays on the helipad, which again, that's quite a flex, I think.
Yeah, there's not many places that you could do that. Stood in the middle of a helipad shooting rabbits or long crossers with a huge mountain range in the distance over a lake.
Yeah.
Especially when you can see, the villages below that you'd never reach, but they're there.
And I think, although I don't suppose it even compares. It does give a bit of a flavour of what it's like to come and do the other sporting activity that you organise out here, which is driven partridge shooting. Tell us a bit about that, because obviously it's not the right time of year for us to have a go at that, but give us a bit of a taste of what it's like.
So between October and March, we run partridge shooting trips. They're run in the same format that you'd expect in the UK. The main, and only real difference is you're in the Atlas Mountains and we're shooting Barbary partridge, which are slightly bigger than a redleg.
Are they the same species or subspecies, or?
So they're very similar. They're still a partridge and they're still from the pheasant family. But they are bigger and they have a slightly different sort of like social style. So they're quite solitary. They don't cover you up in the same way that you get a partridge.
Okay.
And so the partridge shooting takes place in these hills we're looking at now?
Correct, yeah. So there's what we've got 2 beats here. One is where we shot boar yesterday, and the other one is around the lodge, which you would have seen. And the estate as a whole is 50,000 hectares. A majority of that is wild, with a lot of wild birds that we shoot walked up on small driven days. And then we have what we would call the commercial driven shoot, where we run slightly larger days.
And how does that compare to shooting in the UK? Would the beating team drive them in a similar way?
Yeah, absolutely. So the beating team start at the back of a drive and work their way through to the gun line in exactly the same way. All of our birds have been put down in July and August, and they're
that was something I was going to ask. One of the things we often talk about when it comes to Spain, which I guess is we've been chatting, I think Morocco is probably 15 years behind Spain in terms of a destination for British guns. We often talk about Spain, and the conversation of topping up or releasing from crates comes up all the time. Is that something that happens here? How does the estate release their birds, and how does that produce the kind of shooting that you guys enjoy?
So I can't comment on the other shoots in Morocco, but here we're working exactly the same way. That was one of our biggest stipulations when we started working here, that birds are reared and released in the same way that you would expect in the UK. So we have our sheds, birds come as chicks, they're reared and let loose. They mix with our wild stock. There's also a portion, we've got a lot of wild birds here, so they will add chicks and eggs to nests when they find them as well, because a wild mother is better.
That's such a good idea.
It is far better at looking after a brood than just letting them loose in the hills.
Seriously hands-on. The keeping team must be...
So we're quite lucky in that the keeping team have got a lot of time, and they're always out. So when they're farming this sort of ground, they're quite well suited to finding nests, adding a few eggs, and then just leaving them. It's not a hard job once it's done.
And it struck me, our driver again yesterday was telling us that there's wolves in their hills. So predator control must be an interesting...
So also we shoot a lot of pigs. Snakes are an issue, especially with young birds. They like to trap snakes, which is quite exciting. And pigs, obviously. Wolves, not so much. So there's the Moroccan or African golden wolf, which is a bit more like a jackal. They're very few and far between and spooked quite easily, so they tend to sort of
steer
spend more time like deeper in the hills.
So we've got stoats, you've got snakes, we've got foxes, you've got
golden
African wolves. What a place!
Yeah, it's crazy. When you see this stuff sort of like you turn up on a shoot day, it's a little bit a bit surreal. We've got foxes as well, but they get hammered pretty hard, as with most shoots.
Now, a question for me and George: the topography here is truly spectacular. I mean, sheer cliffs essentially. How on earth do you hit any of the birds?
So there's a lot of missing that goes on,
as ever.
Yeah, as ever. And it's just strategically placing guns. So you tend to get a bit of an idea of how a team will perform after the first drive, and we can peg them up and down the hill depending on their ability. So
for an average team, then, what kind of yardage are we looking at? Are we talking 40, 50?
So sort of like 20 yards is a close bird,
and then the sky's the limit.
Yeah. I mean, there's birds that people sort of open their gun to.
I like the idea of having a bigger, so Barbary partridge being bigger than redlegs, a bigger bird, stronger bird.
Yeah, so that they're fierce flyers. It can confuse people early on with lead. When a partridge comes out and they're like, oh, that's much closer than it actually looks. And then they realise that they're, because of the size of them. They're,
interesting.
And how much bigger are they? 25% bigger?
About the size of a hen pheasant.
Okay.
Wow.
Oh, so they're big.
Yeah.
Really
they're
big.
Quite big birds, yeah.
And with the wing beat of a partridge.
Yeah. And they make the full use of going downhill fast as well.
George,
they're rapid.
You need to come and live out here.
Well, I think I might have some Barbary partridge at home.
Escape from your garden enclosure.
So that sounds absolutely amazing. The other thing that we've had a little go at here is a bit of fishing in the lake, which we've got behind us. What's in the lake? Because we haven't found anything yet.
So there's black bass, which are very similar to sort of the American largemouth. There's pike, and the lake for a while held the record for the largest carp caught in Africa.
How big is the largest carp caught in Africa?
I couldn't tell you the exact number, but I think it's about 70 pounds.
It's a big old fish. But the black bass you can catch them on the fly, in theory.
Yeah, so if you guarantee you want to catch one, you'd use lures, you'd use spinners. But if you want to beat yourself up, you can use flies.
We're going to give it a go again in about, half an hour or something like that.
Yeah.
Been given the insider knowledge. Matt's going to take us out and show us how it's done.
But I think the question that a lot of people will be asking is, how long have you been organising trips out here, and how did you find out about it? Because a lot of people would not even have thought Morocco was an option.
So I've been organising trips out here for 6 years. And I found out about it I bumped into the owner of the shoot at the British Shooting Show, and just started having a conversation. He was like, come out. I was very apprehensive about what he was sort of saying his plans were, He said he worked with the Moroccan Tourism Board, runs a big hotel in the mountains and has lots of ground and wants to run a partridge shoot. Come and have a look. Took a bit of a risk, came out here, and well, now here we are with.
And how many teams do you bring out each year?
It varies. So I can't say the last 3 years have been a bit hit and miss, but we aim for 30 teams.
And you accompany each team?
Yeah.
So you're out here a lot then?
Yeah, so I've done, so this year I did 3 months on the trot and then was back for a little bit and then did another 3 months.
Crikey.
You're home away from home.
Yeah.
It's not a bad place to spend the winter, is it?
Yeah, how is the life of an Atlas sporting agent?
It's amazing. It can sort of have its toll spending quite a long time away from home. But as soon as you open the blinds and get that view, it kind of all goes away.
Yeah, I bet.
And so when are you out here? So you're sort of...
So I come out late September, and then come back around Christmas time, normally. Sometimes I dip in and out, and then back out again for late January.
So in the depths of the British winter, when there's frost on the ground, or it's
I'm getting a
raining.
tan. Yeah,
Is it hot?
It's 20 degrees.
20 degrees. But you were
Yeah.
saying earlier that at that time of year there is snow on the hills.
Yeah, so you'll see snow in the distance, but it's 20 degrees in the sun. I mean, we had some days in February and March which were like 35, 40.
And I think the thing that I felt that was particularly different about coming here is that because of the view across the lake and the sunshine, it's got quite a beach holiday vibe.
Yeah, we've both brought our wives with us, haven't we? And
Yes.
they are right now lying by a pool with a cocktail in hand, having an absolutely fantastic time, I think.
Definitely my wife's favourite shoot day of all time.
She didn't come out on the boar shooting. Naomi did, and absolutely loved the experience. But she also saw Misha afterwards with a sort of bronzed tan and thought I would have equally been happy lying by the pool.
So Whittier's quite unique in that it's tied with a 5-star hotel. It's sat right in the middle of the estate, and all of our teams stay here. It's perfect. So we get quite a lot of family groups that come, and while the chaps are off shooting, their wives are by the pool, and then they all meet up for lunch. Maybe do some clays on the helipad, and shoot the last drive together, and then come back down for an evening meal.
And so, apart from... the hotel is amazing. We need to say that. The food is incredibly generous. Again, really amazing breakfasts. I think one of our party had 5 omelettes this morning or something like that.
Are we going to name names?
Let's just say he's the one who shot the pig.
Yeah.
So it's great. But you're burying the lead here, which is that this hotel has an absolutely enormous nightclub.
So, yeah, it's quite extravagant. Under one of the pools, there was a big, very empty space that the owner decided he was going to turn into a nightclub, and went all out with lots of disco lights, various projectors and stages, and a huge bar.
Yeah, and the DJ is when he's not DJing, what's his job?
So when he's not DJing, he's serving drinks elsewhere at the hotel or helping us on shoot days.
And it's unbelievably cool. So, Matt, I think we've probably got to wrap up pretty shortly because we've got important fishing to do. What other trips have you got coming up?
So I'm back out here in July and August, and then we've got some pig shooting in Turkey. We're going to chase some foxes with eagles in Mongolia.
Wow.
Goodness me. How on earth do you
Is that is it a 5-star hotel? That's the important thing.
Can I bring my wife? Is that what you're meaning?
I mean, it's a yurt in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, so we came across that one. Basically, I saw something on the Discovery Channel. Thought that's quite a good idea. Sent a few emails around saying, does anyone know any Mongolian hunters?
Who do you email?
Just
Mongolia,
some friends that have spent have done a lot of travelling.
info@mongolia.com.
All of the guys that run the the trekking safaris in Mongolia.
Yeah.
Saying, do you know any families that we can kind of put some groups with? I put one post on Facebook, and it went absolutely crazy. And then I spent quite a bit of time filtering out the people I thought might actually make it.
Yeah, what sort of people want to go to catch foxes with eagles in Mongolia? Anybody?
there's a lot of people that are well into horses, and a lot of people that are probably slightly crazy, like myself, that just want an experience.
That is amazing. That's
amazing.
Incredible.
It's actually, now that you mention it, I think Nathan Little said that he was going to go and do that when he came on the podcast.
He's due to come on the trip, yeah.
That gives you an idea.
Yeah.
If you want to get an idea, go and listen to the podcast we did with Nathan.
And you spend
Amazing.
quite a bit of time in Spain as well.
Yeah, so we work with Despenadero, which is a fantastic shoot just outside of Madrid, and La Caminera, which is very similar to this setup in that it's a 5-star hotel with a big partridge shoot.
What a life, eh?
I know. And does that mean that when you go back home and shoot, that you're just thinking, where's the hot tub?
No, it's very nice going home and feeling like, oh, this isn't work. It's actually changed my sort of perception on shooting. Before I started organising trips, kind of like felt a little bit like it was work every time I went out on a day with friends. Now, when I'm shooting in England, it actually feels like it's...
You don't run any days in England at all. It's all overseas.
We do a few with teams that have sort of always booked through us, but a majority of it's overseas.
Well, I mean, I think we're going to wrap up here.
Leave the last line to the sunset, really.
Yeah, it's about to dip down behind the ridge, which means we've got to go fishing. But Matt, one thing that is worrying me is you're obviously going to be a recipient of the highly exclusive Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters. How are you going to wear them?
I'm not sure how I'm going to have to... I'm not sure what the options are, but do you do sort of like anything I can wear with shorts?
I think a garter with shorts, that'd be phenomenal. Please send us a photo.
Yes, we will definitely put that up. Great. Well, Matt, it's been an amazing trip, and it's great to have been able to record this podcast on location. It means that we can justify to our boss coming here.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's been great. So I'm going to leave everybody with one final reminder that you can get your own Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters by sending us an email to pod@gunsonpegs.com. Send us your shooting quandaries and queries. Send us your unpopular opinions. Let us know which of Matt's many exotic destinations you'd like to visit. Matt, thank you ever so much for joining us and for bringing us out here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Really incredible experience.
Thanks very much for listening, and goodbye.